Hello, I'm Charles Kovess, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Kovess Show. And I welcome you whether you're watching on Rumble or on YouTube or listening via one of the many podcast platforms. We remind you we have a new format for the show. The foundational principles for the show aren't changing. Instead of exploring one big idea each week, I now explore 3 or 4 major issues that are happening locally and globally, and then consider ways that the self-awareness and passion principles can be used to handle these challenging issues. That way, you can elegantly handle what's going on in your life and then apply the principles in a practical way so that you get very good at applying the principles. Instead of sharing 6 resources each week, I'll share whatever resources might be relevant to the particular issues that I discuss. The show notes now give you access to the foundational principles of the show and also details of my websites and the many resources that are available on those websites. So let's discuss this week's big impact issues and how to handle them elegantly using the self-awareness and passion principles. The first one is the concept of holding politicians accountable for their misdeeds for the rest of their lives. To date, when politicians, particularly in Australia, retire, leave politics, we seem to honour them and we recognise their service regardless of what they have done in office. There are so many bad players in politics these days in Australia and around the world that I say it's now time to stop giving them a clean bill of health when they leave politics. The former Premier of Victoria, Daniel Andrews, has been such a disaster for this state that he must be held to account for the rest of his life for the many misdeeds that he led. Many ministers in his government need to be held to account for the rest of their lives. It's interesting that the 6 premiers of the 6 states of Australia who were in charge at the start of March 2020 and that medical intervention, they've all gone. Interesting, isn't it? Some of them say they didn't want to go, but they didn't want the heat. Now, I have an initiative happening called Track Dick Dan. I want to know what this guy is doing for the rest of his life. I saw a piece in the paper last week that Andrew Twiggy Forrest, an incredibly wealthy man in Australia, is going to retain his services to schmooze up to the Chinese government. Well, I want to shine a light on every activity of Daniel Andrews. I have further information about nefarious activities that he's involved in Gippsland. I'm digging for some more information on that. But I want current politicians to know that they will be held to account. I want them to see what happens to their former colleagues who are scared, literally, to go out into public because they will be booed and harassed and yelled at for their misdeeds in office, whilst in office. My bigger game plan, which won't happen, but it's certainly a game plan, is to take away their retirement benefits. They must be held to account. Now, how do you apply that in your own life? Well, I'm challenging you with the question, are you willing to be held accountable? When somebody pays you money to do something, are you willing to be accountable? And this willingness to be accountable then gives you the right to demand that politicians be held accountable. That's what integrity is, acting consistently with your principles. There's a oneness. Integrity comes from the word integer, meaning one. So that's the question that arises of, what are your values? Do you think it's okay that politicians are behaving in very bad ways, in many cases criminally, in corrupt ways? I don't. That's why I speak out against it. And I'm willing to be held accountable for what I do, for what I promise. The second issue is the World Health Organization, the WHO. I was involved with the work of the Allied Council of Australia, in putting together an international press conference that was held in Australia on Saturday, 11 May in Melbourne. It was very successful. A replay of that press conference is available. It points out the evil intent of the World Health Organization, the World Hurt Organization. It aims to be able to declare a pandemic with no evidence, led by Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who must never be trusted. He is untrustworthy. His activities in his whole life are questionable. I say probably criminal. In fact, the information I have says that it is. This guy should not be leading any such organization. And the loss of any nation's sovereignty by giving powers to the World Hurt Organization is a bad, bad move. The Allied Council of Australia has brought together 37 organizations united in fighting against the WHO and demanding that Australia exits the WHO. I too repeat that demand. We should not be part of the World Health Organization. It is corrupt. The lesson to apply from this is the value of the ACA to date. Have a look at its website. That's one of the resources this week, the Allied Council of Australia.com.au. Now, the message is that people have come together, they've taken responsibility to say, I am responsible for stopping the WHO and its evil intent in this country. And the leaders of these 37 organisations have come together, they've taken responsibility, and they've joined a community of like-minded people. That's what the power of a vision, of a mutual goal does. It enables people to overcome their differences. And so if you're in a group, get really clear on what the game plan of the group is. Now, the group that I'm in at the moment is the coffee drinking group. What a wonderful producer I have here with Julie, bringing me a coffee so that I'm united with her in the love of coffee and you. The third issue is Victorian government budget has been handed down, and the Australian budget. Well, I want to talk about the Victorian government budget. This Victorian government, because of the actions of Dick Dan Andrews, is literally, or not literally, is virtually broke. And the debt levels that are skyrocketing mean there's a big price to pay. Governments cannot just keep borrowing money. Well, in this month's Victorian budget, the Victorian government has announced it's putting in $37 million investment into a space tourism project. Can you believe this crap? 37 million. In the meantime, Victorian hospitals are shutting down. They can't provide services to people who need services as a consequence, by the way, of the medical interventions dictated by Dick Dan and his cronies. But 37 million in space tourism in an American company called Worldview that's got a very questionable past. I say, when you're looking at something that doesn't make sense, all you have to do is follow the money. And I say somebody who made this decision is going to get a benefit from this ridiculous $37 million investment into space tourism. The lesson from this in the self-awareness and passion principles is to observe government waste and understand that this waste cannot continue unabated. So live your life, restructure your life so you don't rely on government for anything. Relying on government for handouts is a sure strategy for losing your independence, for losing your freedom, and taking a very risky position. In my life, I have a whole bunch of alternative strategies to enable Julie and I and my family to thrive regardless of what government does. That gives me a great sense of confidence in my decision making. It also enables me to speak what I consider to be true. So the message here is stand on your own 2 feet. And if you can't, then keep listening to this show, go back to past episodes of this show, and commit to learning what you need to learn. The fourth item is the outrageous attacks on Reiner Fuellmich, a lawyer, a German US lawyer. I've spoken about him in the past. Well, I've got inside information about how politicised the German court is that is allegedly trying him. Reiner has stood up for your freedom, for my freedom. He has stood up against government overreach. He has stood up against big pharma companies. He's pursuing his values. That's the lesson. He knew he would be attacked, and that's the point about pursuing your values. If you fight for freedom, if you're going to war and you fight for freedom, you're putting those values ahead of your safety and security because you might be killed in a war. Well, Reiner has been in jail after he was kidnapped by the German government in Mexico. He's been incarcerated in jail, has not been given bail properly on trumped-up charges, and the judge is not behaving like any proper judge would. I will be shining a light on an ongoing basis on what's happening to Reiner because he deserves my support, your support, to shine a light on the activities of the German government. It appears the German government is worried about Reiner's influence and perhaps, this crazy idea that he might stand for politics, and they want to shut him down because he speaks the truth. And Reiner's doing that, and that's the lesson because he's standing up for his values. That's the lesson to you and to me. Are we willing to stand up for our values? And the second point then is, what are your values? Are you clear on your values? Are you clear on the hierarchy of your values? What's your highest value? What's your second highest value? What are your top 10 values? I urge you to invest time in exploring that. I can help you with that on the self-awareness and passion quest. Okay, my guest this week on TNT Radio, I have the weekly program, the Mind Medicine program. It goes live at 6 p.m. Melbourne time on Sundays, but the recording of every show is available on tntradio.live. I have two guests this week, Michael Gray Griffiths, who runs Cafe Locked-Out, and Rahana Hayes, a producer, and they're putting on a play written by Michael Gray Griffiths called Marooned. It's all about mental health issues. Apparently it's a brilliant play. It's being played in Melbourne on Saturday, the 25th of May. So if you want details on that, listen to the Mind Medicine program or send me an email to charles@covest.com. And Julie and I will be going to watch this play, and apparently it really makes you think about your mental health. So 3 resources this week. One of them is to check out the alignedcouncilofaustralia.com.au to inspire you to join groups that are in alignment with your values. The second is to consider the Marooned play as a resource for you in raising your awareness around mental health and how to handle it. And there might be other plays and movies that you go, yes, I do want to get better knowledge around mental health. Another resource is a fellow called Jason Christoff, an American who's doing some great work in helping people understand their mental state. So another resource this week is the song The Rose, originally performed by Janis Joplin. Bette Midler does a great version of it. And when we're thinking about our values, the second stanza, remember the song goes, some say love, it is a river that drowns the tender reed. Well, the second verse goes like this. It's the heart afraid of breaking that never learns to dance. It's the dream afraid of waking that never takes the chance. It's the one who won't be taken, who cannot seem to give. And here's the killer line. And the soul afraid of dying that never learns to live. And that's my point. If you are scared of dying, you won't live according to your values. You'll take the safe, free route. And I say, once you let go, and there's so much evidence around this, Carlos Castanedas writes about this, once you lose the fear of dying, that's when you truly live. And losing that fear of dying, Reiner Fuellmich has lost that fear of dying. Doc Malik, who I'm a subscriber to, an English doctor who's got a great Substack, he's not scared of being knocked off because he speaks the truth. I'm not scared of being knocked off because I speak the truth. And so that's why this commitment to your values, so that's how I want to live life on my terms. That's a magnificent life. So I hope today's show makes a beneficial difference to your life to help you live it on your terms so that you can become all that you're capable of becoming. If you're new to the show, check the links to the foundational principles and my websites where all those resources are available. Again, thanks for watching and listening. Have an excellent week full of passion, full of challenge, full of joy, full of the happiness that you choose to live. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye.